They found thumb drives with files, thousands of files, showing him raping at least 52 women in various states of unconsciousness. Some of the evidence they found on those thumb drives correlated with the child porn rape charges that I outlined 8 minutes ago. More evidence related to the sexual assaults of children. So women and children are his thing. And if you like to protect your women and children, or if you are a woman, or you have a child, listen up. He is out there. Somehow he showed up at a Greenville, Tennessee home, wanting to use the phone, and they haven't seen him since. That's pretty scary stuff. Joining me now is the man leading the hunt for Sean Williams. It's US Marshal David Jolley of the Eastern District of Tennessee. Marshal, this is terrifying. I mean, look, we do manhunts all the time, and typically, if they're on this show, they do bad things. But I don't know that I've ever seen someone with this incredible pattern of violence and criminal activity who's been able to elude authorities like this. What is the latest on the search for him? How close are we to getting this guy back in shackles?
Unfortunately, we don't have any new leads. Nobody has seen him since the morning of the escape, which was tomorrow will be 21 days. So it's very cold right at the moment.
Do we think he's armed and dangerous? Because he just seems to be a very crafty person. Obviously, he's alleged to have been extraordinarily violent with women and children, but do we think he's armed and dangerous for anybody else out there?
We have no knowledge that he's armed, but we certainly consider him to be a very dangerous individual, a desperate individual who does not, in any circumstances, want to go back to incarcerations. I mean, will do anything that it takes to avoid being taken back into custody.
So as a U.S. Marshal, I can only imagine that it just, enrages you to think that we had him. We had him in belly chains and leg irons and handcuffs in a transit van on the way to court with 2 human assets guarding him, and somehow he was able to get away. Please tell me, if you know more than I do, how that happened.
Well, I wish I knew all the answers to the how part of how this happened. Obviously, there was a failure by the transport team of some sort. Whether they were in collusion in some way, whether it was pure negligence or exactly how it happened. Investigators are looking into that part of it as we speak, led by the FBI. And we'd like to know those answers ourselves, whether, exactly how it happened and did he have any help?
Well, that's a good question. And I want to get to the help on the inside or the outside. Those are always natural questions. But I just want to ask another question about the escape itself. Look, this is the age of surveillance, right? There's a camera everywhere. And I can only imagine that there would have been a camera in that transit van. Was there?
There is a camera in that van, but the camera was not working. So very questionable as well. There were a lot of failures at the particular time. So that's there's just so many questions related to how did this happen when he showed up at the courthouse, when the transport van showed up at our courthouse, pulled into our Sally Port and to meet with our deputy marshals to unload the 2 prisoners that were arriving for court. And obviously one of them was missing. And we've had numerous questions. I can make a long list of all the questions of just how in the world could this possibly happen without the transport officers knowing that he was able to get out of that van, especially since there were 2 officers in there and this guy had handcuffs, and which the handcuffs were found inside the van. Somehow he was able to get out of those. We don't know how that happened. It's not easy to get out of handcuffs.
Well, and Marshal, leg irons and belly chain is the reporting that we've got on it. So I would venture to say that's even harder. I did not know there was a second inmate.
Cuffed, yes.
He was what?
Yeah, if he was properly restrained as protocol calls for, he would have had a belly chain and he would have had leg irons as well.
So a couple questions about this. Let me start with the second inmate. I didn't realize there was another inmate in there. Can that inmate be compelled to tell what he knows? Can he face any kind of charges for aiding, or is he allowed his Fifth Amendment?
He's allowed his Fifth Amendment. I hate to talk too much about the investigation as far as what he has maybe told us or not told us, partly for his own safety, but I hesitate to talk too much about what the other inmate has told us or not told us.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.